am Andy Ruzicka with STL TV outside Police Headquarters downtown St. Louis, where there's going to be a joint press conference to announce federal agents in St. Louis called Operation Legend.
All right, well, thank you everybody for being here today. I know this isn't usual, but I was going to start by just introducing the people that are here, at least the heads of the various agencies, in case you would like to do follow-up interviews with people after this, so you know who's here and who's available. First, we have from the state, we have Governor Mike Parson here, Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt, Sandy Karsten, the Director of Public Safety, Colonel Eric Olson, the Missouri Highway Patrol. From the city, we have Mayor Lyda Krewson, Judge Jimmie Edwards, Public Safety Director, Chief John Hayden, and Sheriff Vernon Betts. From the federal side, we have the resident agent in charge of the Department of Homeland Security, Greg Paris, Marshal John Jordan, Special Agent in charge of the ATF, Marino Vitali, SAC Rich Quinn of the FBI, and Terry Davis, who is the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the DEA. And again, feel free to, so if you want to ask questions or do follow-up interviews, I'm assuming people will be available for that. So violent crime in St. Louis is intolerable lately. It's absolutely intolerable. We all know it's a community problem, but when you're trying to build the community health, we just can't do it with this level of violent crime. The long-term solutions, we need to keep striving for those: education, employment, stronger families, simple respect for law, respect for human life. But policing and law enforcement is also an important part of the solution. And the judge will talk later about the crime statistics lately in the city, but as I said, they're intolerable. So today I'm announcing that Operation Legend will come to the city of St. Louis. That will mean that 50 Department of Homeland Security law enforcement officers will be here. They will be supplemented by the Missouri Highway Patrol, and we'll be adding more prosecutors from the Missouri Attorney General's office into our office. These law enforcement officials will work through our existing federal task forces and support the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. I'm always proud to stand with the men and women of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. But right now, they're overworked and they're underappreciated. So we're trying to give them additional support. Operation Legend was named after Legend Taliaferro, who was a 4-year-old killed in Kansas City on June 29th. He went to sleep and he never woke up. He was killed by a bullet at night. This operation was named after him on July 8th. It started nationally. We are the 7th city to be added. We're 7th and 8th. Memphis is being added today as well. As we know, such tragedies are happening repeatedly here in St. Louis. We have one case that we'd like to highlight. We met with the family yesterday. I was overwhelmed by their support of this initiative and the support of the $25,000 reward the FBI is going to be offering for the arrest of anybody involved in the case. Trinity Riley was an 18-year-old mom who was at home with her son, Caden Johnson, who was 2.5 years old, on April 30th, 2019. At 11:45 at night in the 5900 block of Ferris Avenue, 3 men came in. Apparently, Trinity grabbed Caden and they ran to the closet because they were found dead in the closet, shot to death, Trinity still holding Caden in her arms. So we are going to work as hard as we can to solve this case and appreciate the FBI putting out that reward. Next, I'm going to ask Judge Edwards to speak for a minute about the crime statistics in St. Louis currently.
The St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department responded to at least one homicide or non-fatal shooting every single day during the last 2 months, which resulted in 32 homicides in June and 53 homicides in July, respectively. In order for the police to prevent this type of criminal behavior, police must be more proactive and focus on the drivers of violence and those who have a history of violence. It is important that people accused of violent assaultive crimes in the city of St. Louis be stopped. Today, there are 20 people that the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department has identified as wanted suspects for homicides committed in the city of St. Louis, and several dozen more who are wanted for crimes just as heinous. It is critically important that those suspects, as well as other violent law violators, be taken into custody as soon as possible. In each of the last 2 years, I solicited the help of several federal law enforcement agencies in order to assist the City of St. Louis Police Department with the apprehension and prosecution of similar types of offenders. The impact of the partnerships proved to be very helpful. In 2018 and 2019, homicides and gun offenses were reduced. Because of the current shortage of police officers employed by the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department to address the alarming number of homicides to date, I have once again requested assistance from our federal law enforcement partners to infuse support and to work with city officers to help investigate, arrest, and deter homicides and other violent crimes in the city of St. Louis. The help received from the federal government comes in the form of Operation Legend, introduced here today by U.S. Attorney Jeff Jensen. I am profoundly grateful for the courage and service of the men and women of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, the Missouri Highway Patrol, and the several participant federal law enforcement agencies. I know that their work is not easy. Lastly, I want to thank St. Louis Mayor Lyda Krewson, Missouri Governor Mike Parson, United States Attorney Jeff Jensen, the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, and all of the special agents in charge and their respective agents who are dedicated to help with public safety in the city of St. Louis. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Judge. So let me talk about the details a little bit. Operation Legend, as I said, is 50 law enforcement officials who will be focused on active shooters, homicide cases. They'll be in the most distressed neighborhoods and focused on gangs. They will be assigned to, and they will also be, responding to shot spotter incidents and other shots fired incidents. Those are the roles they will play. They will be assigned to existing federal task forces. We have the OCDF strike force, and we have, which is about 100 or so agents and officers, and that will be beefed up. We also have the ATF strike force, which is responding to shooting scenes and entering the shell casings into NIBIN so that we can connect shooting scenes together. And then a group will also go to the Marshal's Fugitive Task Force to start arresting clearing outstanding warrants, especially for violent criminals. What Operation Legend is not is protection of federal buildings, protection of federal properties. It's not riot police. It's not officers wearing fatigues. This is purely a violent crime effort, an effort to reduce the terrible murder rate we have seen lately. 53 murders in July in a city of 300,000 people. We started on Wednesday charging these cases. We're changing the way some of our tactics from a prosecution standpoint and an investigatory standpoint. So though we had, say, 38 defendants charged Wednesday, 20 of them were a part of this Operation Legend. There were 3 different conspiracies. You can see the guns and drugs that were seized in those operations up on the screen. As I said, we've also received tremendous support from the Missouri Attorney General's office, and I'll ask General Schmidt to speak about that.
Thank you, Jeff, and it's an honor to be here, and I want to thank Jeff for his leadership and all of our federal and state partners. and really an unprecedented cooperative effort to tackle violent crime here in St. Louis, which we know has reached epidemic-like levels. The numbers of homicides are soaring, more than we saw even last year, and there's a human toll that we can't lose sight of, the mothers and the fathers and the kids who are being lost and people who feel unsafe in their communities. And so while these courageous law enforcement officers go out and do the dangerous work of arresting violent criminals, our office will be working with the U.S. Attorney's Office to prosecute those violent offenders as well. This is nothing new. This cooperation for us with the U.S. Attorney's Office, which is unprecedented across the country, has yielded significant results since we launched the Safer Streets Initiative, but we will certainly have a focus here with Operation Legend. And I just want to commend everyone for coming together, understanding the sense of urgency that we all need to have. It's vitally important that we do everything we can to work together to keep our community safe. And at the Attorney General's office, we're going to do everything we can to be a part of that. Thank you.
As I said, the 50 will be divided up among those task forces. And I'd ask if you're covering this, if you could hopefully at some point take a shot of the picture of both Trinity and Hayden, which has the number to call and announces the $25,000 reward. So we could please put that out as much as possible if you would. And lastly, I'm honored to have here the Governor, Mike Parson.
Thank you, Jeff. Let me first start off by saying a lot of people have made a lot of remarks this morning about receiving help from the federal government, the state government, the local levels. But the Attorney General mentioned one thing that's very dear to me. Being in law enforcement for 22 years is the victims that are out there and the family members, the neighborhoods that are out there having to deal with this every day as we speak up here. And as you heard Jimmie say when he's talking about homicides every day, we've got a serious problem in this state with the homicide rate, and we got to deal with it. No one agency is going to be able to fix this, whether it's the federal level, the state level, the counties, or the cities. It's going to take all of us working together to really go after this problem. And it's going to take a real effort of hard work to go out here and to take these violent criminals off the street. And I want to keep in mind, I'm talking about violent criminals. That's what we're talking about. That's why this task force is here. And I want to thank Jeff for his work. I want to thank the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, U.S. Attorney General's office. I want to thank the mayor here in St. Louis for her efforts with that, being able to work with her, Chief of Police, all the people that I've had the opportunity to work with over the last 2 years trying to bring state resources in there to help with this problem. But the reality of it is we got to do a better job. We got to get more resources in here to fight violent criminals here, not only here, but across the state. What happens in St. Louis is a huge factor for the entire state. It is just not a St. Louis problem. This is a state problem when these crime rates are going as high as they are, especially when it's on homicide. It's exactly why we called a special session, try to do everything we can to give everybody the tools they need to fight violent criminals in there. And here we are today with every one of us making a commitment to change the streets of St. Louis to make them better, to make them safer, and give the people out there those rights to get back out and be everyday citizens without walking down the streets in fear. And that's one of the things I think should be the ultimate thing that we're going to try to get to. So with that, it's glad to be in St. Louis today. Let me just say this. I'm on a little bit of tight schedule. I'm going to be here for a little bit, but I'll leave here shortly, so I don't want anything, I'm walking out or anything on here. But let me turn it back over to you, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said originally, it's simply intolerable. We can't live in a world where people are afraid to sit on their front porch, where people are afraid to have their children play in the streets, and they're afraid to have their children wait at a bus stop. They're afraid to be in their own house at 11:45 p.m. at night. We just can't have that. So,
how many arrests or cases or prosecutions do you hope to put together, let's say, by the end of this year through this effort?
It's hard to predict, Kevin. We'll prosecute, every case we can federally, and then the other ones we'll send over to the circuit attorney's office. But I can't predict the numbers. But I'm happy to keep you posted as it goes.
Well, another way to put it, how big of a dent do you hope this will have or could have? What's the potential?
I think we'll have a big dent. It's the chief is putting these people in the places where they need these officers, the most strategic places. I think that will have a big dent. And then also, well, I hope it will. I also, again, we're kind of changing our tactics from a prosecutorial standpoint and pulling down cases sooner, pulling people out of conspiracy sooner, where typically we might sort of wait and try to get everybody in the conspiracy. We're going to start pulling them down now as soon as we can, because we're in this epidemic of violent crime.
Can you tell us what's the time commitment on this? Is this going to be in place for a year, 2 years? Are these folks who are moving here, are they looking at this as a temporary assignment? Are they moving their families here? Or what's going on?
It's a temporary assignment. I don't want to say how long, though, because I think for the people that are out there that might be trying to evade this effort, I don't want them to know when the end date is. But it's temporary, to answer your question. It's not permanent.
Earlier that said you made some arrests already.
Yes,
That,
right.
That these were arrests made by officers. Part of this is investigations that were going on before the surge of officers,
Right.
or can you clarify that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So these were existing cases, and they fall in, and they're connected to the city of St. Louis. We would have continued to investigate these cases for longer, typically, to try to get more deeply into those conspiracies, but we're just not going to wait. We're changing our tactics, and we're starting to pull them down now. And then those 3 task forces, FBI, ATF, HSI, and the city police, were all involved in those cases.
And what's the benefit of, as you said, pulling someone out earlier and charging them as opposed to waiting to build up a case against maybe an entire operation or an entire conspiracy?
Well, in normal times, you investigate these large cases, starting typically with the lower level people, and then you flip upwards and work your way up through the conspiracy to get to the top people. But the problem is, if we wait, people are dying on the street. So we're going to take them off now. The federal sentences are extremely tough. Hopefully they'll agree to cooperate anyway.
Looking at the number of murders now, 53 in July, it's a big, impressive group. Why did you guys wait so long to put a group like this together to combat the murders?
Right. Well, the whole, well, we've been doing it. I mean, I want to be clear. We've had a large group in these OSDF, ATF strike forces, and the fugitive task force. We've prosecuted more firearms cases than any other district in the country, and more than get prosecuted in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago. So we've been doing it aggressively. Our spike happened in June and July, and so now we're getting the resources. It takes, for example, Kansas City saw their spiking, I believe, was March, April. It takes a while to get all the logistics together, to get people moved here. It just takes some logistics, and there are limited resources around the country because this is not just a St. Louis problem, it's a national problem.
There are going to be those who are going to look at the timing of this and say, you just had a progressive prosecutor reelected on Tuesday, and now you're infusing federal forces into the city. How do you respond to people who might say this is a response to that election?
Well, it's been in the works for some time. These things don't just happen in a day or 2 days. Trust me. And I called Kim, and we spoke about it. She's not available today because I believe she's out of town, but I hope to continue working with her on these cases, and we'll send over the cases that are not federal, or if we think we can get more time in state court than in federal court, we want to move them over there. We're just going to keep working together as we have been. It has nothing to do with an election.
Can we have Chief Hayden step up to the mic for a second? Sure. Chief, do you think you waited too long to put together an effort like this? These homicides have been going on an awful long time, and the same thing I said to Jeff Jensen, 53 in July. Did you wait too long to put together this massive effort?
No, I think that the U.S. Attorney answered that question appropriately. I mean, hey, it does take time to galvanize resources. You know, we're not the only city that's going through this. And so this is, it did spike in June and July. You know, of course, July was even worse than June. And so I think the answer to that question is simply, as quickly as we could, galvanize these types of resources. Even though we've been working on them as best we can, you know, we're now appreciative of the additional 50 officers. It would be very helpful for us.
Homicides are up like 35%. How much do you expect this effort to bring that down? Obviously, you're certainly not happy with where things are right now.
Absolutely. So a minimum, we talked about dozens of persons wanted for other violent crime, and so we know there's a minimum of 20 persons wanted for homicides. There's another dozens of people that are wanted for other violent activity, carjackings and things like that, and then some other hard warrants. So, I mean, hey, if we could arrest 100 people of violent people that are already wanted for violent crime, it would be certainly a big help to our city.
What message do you have, Chief, for people living in these hard-pressed neighborhoods that are like war zones right now?
I would say that please assist us as much as you can. I know we're always asking for additional assistance by way of people sharing information with us. A lot of times people know things about a lot of these violent criminal activity that they aren't sharing. Please assist us with this effort to make your neighborhood safer.
And Chief, in the last couple of weeks, there have been 6 police officers shot in the city and 11 shot at total. What do you say to your rank and file about what are you doing there to keep them safe? And will this effort help with that at all?
Sure. So this effort should absolutely make that assist in that effort. Hey, what we tell our officers is to make sure they're exercising tactics that they were taught in the academy. Certainly be particularly vigilant, and that people are obviously targeting police officers in some of these instances. I mean, some of these are clear shooting at officers, and so the level of violence against police has gone up, certainly in the past 8 weeks or so.
Does it feel like it's open season on police?
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I'm just saying people are being very brazen and bold with their activity, and that police are naturally in response being very vigilant as to what's going on.
We're going to take 2 more questions, but you're welcome to follow after. This one is for you. Does this represent a shift in your opinion of the assistance that federal troops could provide to the city of St. Louis? You've been on record as saying that you wouldn't necessarily welcome federal troops in under some circumstances. So is this a shift in terms of your opinion on that? Or?
No, this is not a shift at all. I have always really appreciated the partnerships that we've had with our federal agencies, and am very happy to have the additional 50 officers to work collaboratively and cooperatively with the St. Louis Police Department. I mean, this crime that we're having, and it's happening, of course, across the country, but it is really intolerable for the people who live here. So no, always very appreciative of our federal partnerships.
There's been questions that are coming out talking about having federal agents. I mean, you look at Portland and other places like that, but they're talking about federal agents on the streets of cities.
Sure.
The answer there is also the governor as well, your opponent coming up here in November, spoke out about that today, saying it's election season, you're addressing crime, and now all of a sudden you want to look at violence and federal agents. You don't want to, how do you respond to that as well?
So let me say, I'm sure you saw the slide where it talked about what this is and what this is not. So this is not about federal agents being on the street for protests. This has nothing to do with that. This is all about our federal partners here working along with our St. Louis Police Department side by side with our officers in a cooperative and collaborative way in order to stem violent crime, period. Thank you.
Is there a long-term plan as far as attacking the poverty levels? Because many studies say that poverty is the main contributor to crime, and it seems like in this region that people keep throwing like more police officers on the street to address it, and the rates haven't changed. So is there any kind of adjacent plan to address the poverty that actually leads to the crime?
So let me say a couple things about that. Number one, we have fewer police officers today than we've had in 10, 15 years. You can look back at some of the charts that are, 10 years ago, we probably had 1,700 officers. So today we have about 1,200 officers. So we do not have enough officers today, so we're not throwing more officers at it. That being said, it's very, very important to also focus on prevention. Preventing crime means mental health services. It means addiction services. It means jobs. It means training. It means summer jobs for young people. It means recreation programs. All of those things. And so this is not either or, this is both and. So, thank you.
That was our last question.
Let me go back to where yours is. Let me just be real clear about this. This has nothing to do with elections. When you talk about homicides, no barriers or no elections. And I'm not even been in the political arena for 4 or 5 months, just simply because there's many other things we've been doing around the state when it comes to a virus, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to unemployment and violent crime. We've been focusing on special session, what we can do. Since day one when I was governor, I was in St. Louis on several occasions trying to see what I could do as a role of governor to help with the city of St. Louis. We had resources we put in early on to St. Louis, working with the local agencies here to be able to do that. We reached out to communities like Better Family Life, to the clergy, trying to figure out how we really can help and what resources we have. We just funded, I think, some mental health issues, so some here in St. Louis that we're doing. So some other things where we're trying to work with the clergy, with some of the nonprofits up here. But let me go back to the basic question that I think I'm going to switch over here to the question you asked too. If we are to change society, it is through those kids. You know, you're not going to change violent criminals very much. They are violent criminals. But if you really want to change, it's going to talk about early childhood development. You're going to have to give a kid an opportunity to get an education, a safe education. You're going to have to give people the way to get health care. In a lot of these areas with that poverty is one of the things that I've been in there several times. People who haven't been in those areas don't realize what that problem is. And I want to say outside this region a little bit. But it's a much bigger problem. That's a long-term effect, but we got to start there. You got to start with these kids trying to figure out how do you get them an education, how do you get them to a safe area, and once you get that education, how do you get them a job? And it takes a long time to do that, but we ought to be focusing just as much on that as we should all of us in this room today talking about violent crime. So, pardon me?
Hasn't there been like budget cuts to education on the statewide level though?
Well, I mean, before the COVID-19, we were the highest funding in education we've ever had in the state of Missouri. It's been the highest funding we've ever done in the state of Missouri. COVID-19 has changed everything on the economy, but we got to get back up to that. We got to get the education funding back up there. But that was a priority from day one. It's been that way for 2 years. But on that, thank you.
Marshal John Jordan. I just wanted to reflect a little bit on something Chief Hayden was saying. You know, we're getting people in to help with the fugitive task force that the marshals run. And what I can tell you is that this year alone, that we've arrested 336 federal fugitives. Now, this is in conjunction with John's men, Colonel Eric Olson's men with the Highway Patrol, and other agencies within this room. And of those 336, 209 were wanted on felony weapons charges. At the same time, 154 of those were also wanted on state felonies. 40 of those were fugitives that were wanted for homicide, and 43 of them were wanted for felony weapons charges and narcotic charges at the same time. So this has been an ongoing battle. This is not something that's new. What it is, it's an effective tool that is available in this area, and Judge Edwards and the mayor and everybody is supportive of these efforts. And so we're going to continue that because we're going after the violent offenders in this area. And so this is an enhancement and a continuation of what the chief and other people are trying to get done and have been doing for quite some time.
We are communicating constantly. We have conversations at least once a week with respect to violent crimes in the city of St. Louis. And I can tell you that this coordinated effort and the relationship is a type of relationship that we absolutely respect and that we want in the city of St. Louis. For example, on June 1st, which was one of the most violent nights in the city of St. Louis in history, the first night of the protest. I was here at headquarters at 3 a.m. As we were going and working out of our real-time crime center. And once it reached a level, I started to wake up our federal partners. I started to wake up those folk for their assistance, the FBI, the ATF, the DEA, St. Louis County, the Highway Patrol. And within 20 to 30 minutes, they were responding. And so the relationship is a terrific relationship, but it's a relationship of respect. And so it's a relationship where the chief of police for the city of St. Louis is in fact the individual that directs policing in the city of St. Louis. So our federal partners are, while very, very helpful, they really understand the responsibility and who has the authority to direct. Well, I think that this federal partnership has been around as long as I've been around. Within days of me taking the job, I reached out because, of course, many of those people I know from my former job. And so I had the opportunity to reach out to them and to develop the relationship. And so it wasn't a problem with having to develop a trust. I mean, the trust was there. And so I appealed to them now for over 2 years, and they have consistently supported us in the city of St. Louis. And so to the residents, this is nothing new. It's been going on now for 2 years. You've not seen federal officers offending our citizens and your neighbors. The only thing that hopefully you've seen is that these officers assisting police officers where we really need the help. Well, it's just an opportunity to convene. During the initial protests, I had the opportunity to convene all of our partners statewide and at the federal level. And it's just another opportunity to convene all of the folk that care and love our city and that want crime reduced in our city. And so I would like to see crime reduced in our city in a very measurable way, a very objective way, and a very efficient way.